Oh, it was great. It was just so incredible to be out at Ulu with only 6 people in the water. And we were actually, I think, very lucky in that heat, because the heat prior to mine, Marday told me that, there weren't very many waves coming through. It was getting inconsistent. But for our heat, it just started to pump. It was just like wave after wave, so it was great. Oh, I can't remember my first wave in Bali ever, but I think it was in probably 1981, I came for the On Bali Pro contest, and they actually had it at Uluwatu, but there was no accommodation at Uluwatu at the time, so we were staying in at Kuta, and I think the very first surf was probably at Kuta Reef, and I've always got really fond memories of it because it's such a perfect reef break wave, and it was 3 to 4 feet and just peeling off really nicely. I think my favourite waves would be in Hawaii on the North Shore. When I was younger and when I was competing during the 70s and the 80s, I used to spend about 3 to 4 months in Hawaii every year, and it was a pretty incredible experience to be able to surf like Sunset and Pipeline and Waimea, Haleiwa, Rocky Point, Backdoor Pipe, Off the Wall. They're some of the best waves in the world, and the thing that's really unique about Hawaii is the fact that the climate is, even in winter, it's still warm. You may just need like a vest in the water just for the wind because the water's so nice. And all the surf spots are in like a 10-kilometre radius, like each spot is straight after the other. I think probably the most challenging situation was maybe when I first started going to Hawaii in the 70s, because in those days there was no such thing as the pro tour, and all the young Australians and South Africans wanted to get into the Hawaiian events. That was what we really wanted to do, was get invited to them, and you had to actually go to Hawaii and just paddle into huge waves and take off on anything, and take all the wipeouts to get noticed by the Hawaiians to get invited to the contest. So the challenge was, not to be scared and to just go out there and sort of basically go for it. Well, I think it's, surfing's in a really sort of wonderful place. It's now possible, if you're talented enough, to really make a good living from surfing. And it's really good to see surfers from other areas like on the tour now and doing well in surfing. For a long time, pro surfing was just dominated by the Australians, the Hawaiians and the South Africans, and some surfers from California. There weren't really, except for Rico de Souza, I think he was the first Brazilian surfer on the tour when I was on the tour. But it's really good to see now that there's so many surfers, like the surfers from Europe, and there's so many good surfers from Brazil, and it's really like surfing is now really international, there's surfers from all over the world. So it's probably the best time to be a pro surfer, but also the hardest time because there's so many people want to be pro surfers these days. Well, I haven't really seen them surf in real life. I've seen them surf on some of the webcasts and the contests, and I've seen a few videos and seen photos of them in the magazines. But Brazil has become like a real powerhouse for pro surfing. You've got Gabriel Medina at this point in time, just won the contest in Fiji and is leading the ratings. And Adriano de Souza has been like an incredible competitor. I love how passionate about competing he is, and what a massive will Adriano has to win. So I think I think what the Brazilian surfers have brought to the tour is a real competitive attitude and a real will to win, and I actually love seeing it. It's really hard, it's sort of I think if you get to make a living from something that you really enjoy doing, I think you're incredibly fortunate. Like I've been incredibly fortunate through surfing to be able to travel all over the world and to have friends all over the world, and I think it's really important not to get too sort of, I don't know if you guys understand this phrase, but like too big-headed or too much of, become too much of an egomaniac, because being a good surfer, it's not, in the scheme of things, it's not really that important. It just means that I can surf better than you guys. But, compared to a doctor who's working in a hospital and saving people's lives, and, doctors that are working with, people with cancer and saving them, it's fairly insignificant to be a pro surfer. So I think you've just got to keep sight of the big picture and realise just because you can surf okay, it doesn't make you a better person than anyone else. It just means that you can surf better than them. I decided to surf because my parents both surfed. I was born in 1957 and both my mother and father surfed. So I got introduced to surfing because they were passionate about going surfing. And I think a lot of kids are introduced to various sports by their parents. Like if your dad is really keen on soccer, then you probably sign up for soccer as a kid, or if your dad likes tennis. I think your parents set like a little bit of direction in the way you go for sport, and it's only if you don't sort of like the sport that you then tell your parents you don't like the sport and you choose another sport. But I always loved being in the water and catching waves and going surfing, so I sort of feel very fortunate that my parents surfed and they introduced me to surfing at a very young age.